She was a widow, alone on the edge of the Texas Panhandle. He was a fugitive, a Comanche warrior with a price on his head, bleeding out in a dust storm. Her decision to drag him from the mud and hide him in her root cellar wasn't just kindness. It was an act of treason. This isn't just a frontier romance. This is the story of Anna Vance and the warrior Tavis, a story of a desperate secret, a brutal betrayal, and a love that sparked a manhunt across a territory crying out for blood. What happens when the man you save is the one man the world wants dead? The wind that swept across the Texas Panhandle in 1877 had a name: the Devil's Breath. It came from the north, a rolling, tumbling wall of red dirt that turned noon into midnight and suffocated the sky. Anna Vance, 24 years old and a widow for one of them, felt the pressure drop hours before the storm hit. Her late husband, Jacob, had taught her to read the land. The cattle were lowing, huddled against the weak lee of their small sod-roofed barn. The air smelled of iron and ozone. She barred the door of her cabin, a small, stubborn structure of cottonwood and sod Jacob had built with his own hands. The grave where those hands now rested was just 100 yards away, marked by a simple wooden cross. She was alone, miles from the nearest settlement of Redemption Creek, a town that hadn't yet lived up to its name. The storm hit not as a gale, but as a physical blow. The world outside the cabin ceased to exist, replaced by a screaming, abrasive darkness. For 2 days, Anna lived in a twilight world, the fine red dust finding its way through every crack, coating her tongue, stinging her eyes. She subsisted on jerky and stale water from her barrel, the sound of the wind like a mournful wail that matched the hollow space in her chest. On the third morning, the wind broke. A strange, heavy silence fell, broken only by the drip of a sudden, merciful rain that began to wash the world clean. The air was thick and cold. Desperate for fresh water and to check on her 2 remaining cows, Anna unbarred the door. The landscape was alien. The creek that marked the edge of her property was choked with mud and debris. It was there, half submerged in the red sludge and tangled in the roots of an upended mesquite, that she saw it. It wasn't a man, not at first. It was a shape, a mess of wet black hair, buckskin, and a dark, spreading stain. Her first instinct was to run. Her second was to fetch Jacob's rifle. She did neither. She just stared, her heart a cold knot. Cautiously she edged closer, her boots sinking in the muck. He was alive, barely. He was Comanche. There was no mistaking the high cheekbones, the copper skin, or the single eagle feather braided into his long, matted hair. He was young, perhaps her age, and built with a lean, powerful grace that was evident even in his collapse. A ragged hole in his left side, just above the hip, oozed a dark, sluggish blood. It was a bullet wound, festering and angry. Every instinct screamed at her. The Red River War was a fresh scar on this land. The settlers in Redemption Creek spoke of men like him with a mixture of terror and biblical hatred. To them, he was not a man. He was a savage, a renegade. Then he groaned, a low sound of such profound agony that it cut through her fear. His eyes, dark and delirious with fever, flickered open. He saw her, and a spark of pure, animalistic defiance flared. He tried to move, to reach for a knife sheathed at his belt, but the effort cost him, and he sank back with a shudder. Anna looked up at the empty, bruised sky. She was alone. No one would ever know. She could walk away. Let the creek, the cold and the infection finish what the bullet had started. It was the sensible thing to do. It was what Sheriff Jedediah Stone, a hard but fair man, would expect. She thought of the wanted poster she'd seen in the general store, nailed up by a sour-looking bounty hunter named Davis Croft. $200, dead or alive, the Comanche known as Tavis, for the murder of Sergeant Miles Calhoun, U.S. Cavalry. She looked at the man dying in the mud. He looked less like a murderer and more like a hunted animal. "Damn it all," she whispered, the words stolen by the wind. She looked back at her cabin. She thought of Jacob, who had died from a snakebite because he was too far from help. She couldn't. With strength she didn't know she possessed, Anna grabbed the warrior under his arms. He was heavy, a dead weight. She slipped, fell to her knees in the cold mud, and hauled him up again. She dragged him, step by painful step, across the yard and into the cabin. She didn't take him to her bed. That was too open. Instead, she dragged him to the thick buffalo rug in the center of the room. Kicking it aside, she revealed the flat wooden trapdoor. She pulled it open, revealing the dark, musty-smelling square of her root cellar. It was shallow, just 4 feet deep, smelling of damp earth, potatoes, and smoked ham. It was a tomb, or a sanctuary. She eased him down into the darkness. He was barely conscious, his breathing shallow. She fetched her medical box, carbolic acid, bandages, and a bottle of laudanum. As she descended the ladder, the man, Tavis, focused on her. He said something, a dry rasp in a language she didn't understand. It sounded like a curse or a plea. "You're safe," she said, her voice trembling. "For now." She lit a lantern, and the small earthen room filled with shadows. His eyes, sharp as obsidian shards, tracked her every move. He flinched as she brought the wet cloth to his wound. "This is going to hurt," she said, more to herself than to him. She uncorked the carbolic acid. "I am sorry." When the acid hit the infected wound, he didn't scream. He arched off the dirt floor with a strangled hiss, his entire body rigid as iron. His hand shot out, grabbing her wrist with a grip that made her cry out. The lantern wobbled, threatening to plunge them into darkness. For a long, terrible second, they were frozen. The hunted and the helper, locked in a grip of pain and terror. His eyes burned into hers. He was searching for the lie, for the trap. Anna didn't pull away. She forced her own hand to go limp, a sign of surrender. "I am not killing you," she said, enunciating each word. "I am helping." Slowly his grip loosened. His head fell back, his face pale and slick with sweat. He trusted her, or he was simply too weak to fight. She cleaned the wound, packed it, and bandaged it with strips of her own bed linens. She forced a few drops of laudanum, mixed with water between his cracked lips. He coughed, then swallowed, his eyes finally fluttering closed. Anna sat back on her heels, her entire body shaking from adrenaline. The cabin above was silent. Outside, the rain fell. Below the floorboards of her life, a fugitive Comanche warrior, wanted for murder, lay breathing in her cellar. She had just signed her own death warrant, or she had just, for the first time since Jacob died, done something that felt truly alive. She didn't know which. For 3 days, Anna lived a double life. Above ground, she was the grieving widow, mending her fences, clearing debris, and calming her half-wild cattle. She worked with a frantic energy, trying to make the ranch look as normal and unremarkable as possible. Below ground, in the lantern-lit dark, she was a nurse to a man who represented everything her world feared. His name was Tavis. He whispered it on the 2nd day, during a lucid moment between fevers. "Tavis," he'd said, pointing to his chest. "Anna," she replied, pointing to hers. Communication was a slow, painful pantomime. He was a difficult patient. He fought the laudanum, clearly hating the fog it brought. But the fever was a worse enemy, and she was relentless, forcing water and broth down his throat. She learned he was proud. When she tried to help him relieve himself into a bucket, his dark eyes flashed with such humiliation that she turned her back, her own face burning, granting him the small dignity. She tended the wound. It was deep, and the bullet was still in there. She knew, with a sickening certainty, that it would have to come out. On the 4th day, the fever broke. He woke, his eyes clear and intelligent for the first time. He was weak, but the defiance was back, mixed with something new, a profound, wary curiosity. He watched her. He watched her hands as she rebandaged his side, her movements now practiced and gentle. He spoke, a low, melodic sentence in his own tongue. She shook her head. "I don't understand." He pointed to the bandages, then to her. He tapped his chest twice, a gesture she recognized as "thank you." "You're welcome," she whispered. The fragile peace was shattered by the sound of horse hooves. Anna's blood ran cold. Tavis heard it too. His body tensed, and he immediately tried to sit up, his hand reflexively going for the knife that was no longer there. "No," Anna hissed, pushing him flat. "Stay. Quiet. Not a sound." She scrambled up the ladder, pulled the trapdoor shut, and dragged the heavy buffalo rug over it. She kicked straw and dirt over the seams, her heart hammering against her ribs. She glanced wildly around the cabin. The bloody rags were burned. The bowl she'd used was clean. She grabbed her shawl, threw it over her shoulders, and stepped onto the porch, smoothing her apron, trying to look bored. 2 riders were approaching. One was Sheriff Jedediah Stone. The other was the bounty hunter, Davis Croft. Croft was a man who looked like he'd been carved from gristle and tobacco spit. His eyes, small and black, missed nothing. He wore 2 pistols, holstered low. Sheriff Stone was the opposite, tall, broad, his face weathered, but his eyes clear. He respected Anna and had been Jacob's friend. "Mrs. Vance," Stone said, tipping his hat. His voice was heavy. "Apologies for the intrusion." "Sheriff," Anna replied, forcing her voice to remain steady. "Mr. Croft." Davis Croft just nodded, his gaze sweeping over her property, lingering on the barn, the creek line, the cabin chimney. He was sniffing the air like a bloodhound. "Nasty storm," Stone continued, dismounting. "You fare all right out here alone?" "The roof held," Anna said. "Lost some fencing. The creek's a mess, but I'm fine." "Glad to hear it." Stone looked uncomfortable. "Anna, we're on a manhunt. A Comanche brave, name of Tavis, the one who killed Sergeant Calhoun over at Fort Richardson. You seen the poster?" "I have," Anna said, her hands clenched in her apron. "We tracked him this way before the storm hit," Croft cut in, his voice a dry rasp. "He didn't dismount. Figured the storm would have either killed him or flushed him out. He was wounded. Shot in the side." Anna's heart stopped. She forced a look of mild surprise onto her face. "Here? So close?" "We found his horse, lamed, 5 miles north," Stone said. "He's on foot, and he's desperate. A man like that, he might see a lone woman's cabin as an easy target." "I've seen no one, Sheriff," Anna said. The lie tasted like ash. Croft spat a stream of tobacco juice into the mud. "You sure about that, Mom? No missing food? No tracks?" "The rain washed everything away, Mr. Croft, and I keep my larder locked." Stone nodded, satisfied, but Croft's eyes narrowed. He was still scanning, and his gaze fixed on the ground near the cabin's foundation. Anna's stomach lurched. The mud, the drag marks. The rain had washed most of it away, but not all. There was a faint, disturbed trail leading from the creek to her door. "Sheriff," Croft said, swinging down from his horse. "Mind if I take a look inside, just to be sure?" He could be holed up, waiting for her to sleep. "Mr. Croft, this is Mrs. Vance's home," Stone said, his tone hardening. "And she's a woman alone," Croft countered smoothly. "Just want to make sure she's safe, Sheriff. That's all." Anna had no choice. "Of course. Be my guest." She led them inside. The cabin was tiny. One room, a bed, a cold hearth, a table. It took them 10 seconds to see everything. Croft was meticulous. He looked under the bed. He opened her pie safe. His eyes scanned the floor. He paused, his boot tapping the floor right over the buffalo rug. Directly above Tavis. Anna felt dizzy. The silence in the cabin was so loud she was sure he could hear her heart. Tap, tap, tap. Croft looked at the rug. "Root cellar?" he asked. "Yes," Anna said, her voice a thin thread. "Potatoes, smoked meats. Mind if I—" He hooked his finger, gesturing for her to move the rug. "Davis," Sheriff Stone said, his voice sharp with impatience. "That's enough. You're bothering the lady. If he was in there, she'd be dead already, or she'd be screaming." Croft stared at Anna for a long, unbearable moment. He was calculating. He didn't believe her. He could smell the lie, but he couldn't prove it. "Fine," Croft snapped, turning for the door. "But when he slits your throat in the night, ma'am, don't say I didn't offer to look." He stalked out. Sheriff Stone lingered, his face full of apology and a new, unsettling suspicion. "Anna," he said, his voice low, "if you do see anything, if you even feel something is wrong, you fire Jacob's rifle twice. I'll have a deputy posted at the crossroads for a few days. You hear me?" "I hear you, Jedediah. Thank you." He nodded, put his hat back on, and left. Anna watched them ride away until they were just specks. She leaned against the doorframe, her legs finally giving way, and slid to the floor, gasping for air. She had survived. But Croft's visit had changed everything. He was a hound who had the scent. When she finally had the strength, she pulled back the rug and opened the trapdoor. Tavis was not lying down. He was crouched at the base of the ladder, his muscles coiled. In his hand was the small paring knife Anna had left on a sack of potatoes. His eyes were black fire. He had heard every word. He knew, without a shadow of a doubt, what she had just risked for him. He looked at the knife in his hand, then at her. He didn't drop it, but he flipped it, holding it out to her, hilt first. It was the second time he had surrendered to her. The bullet had to come out. The wound, which had briefly seemed better, was now an angry purple. The fever was returning, this time with a vengeance. Anna knew, with the practical finality of the frontier, that if she did nothing, he would be dead by the end of the week. She laid out her tools on a clean cloth. Jacob's shaving razor, honed to a wicked edge, the paring knife, and a pair of pliers from the barn, which she'd boiled for 20 minutes. She also had a full bottle of whiskey and a strip of leather. She showed them to Tavis. He looked at the tools, then at her. His face was granite. He understood. "This," she said, holding up the whiskey, "is for the pain." He shook his head, pushing the bottle away. "You must," she insisted. "Or this." She held up the leather strap. Tavis took the leather and placed it between his teeth. He lay back, his hands gripping the edges of the cot she had managed to lower into the cellar. He locked his eyes on the earthen ceiling, his entire body bracing for the impact. "Hold." "Still," Anna whispered, her hands shaking. She sterilized the razor and made the cut. Tavis's body went rigid as a board, a choked, guttural sound forced from his throat. But he did not move. His knuckles were white. Anna worked quickly, her fear replaced by a cold, necessary focus. The cellar was hot, smelling of blood, sweat, and whiskey. She probed the wound, her fingers searching for the foreign object. I can't find it," she said, desperation creeping into her voice. Tavis grunted, spit the leather out. "Deep," he rasped, his first English word. "Deeper." He was right. The bullet was lodged against the bone of his hip. She used the pliers. When they gripped the lead, he convulsed, a sharp cry torn from him. She pulled. The sound of the metal scraping bone was horrific. Then it was free. She dropped the misshapen piece of lead into a bowl with a clink. Tavis was pale, his forehead slick with a cold sweat, but his eyes were clear. He was looking at her with an intensity that stripped her bare. She poured the whiskey directly into the open wound. This time he screamed. It was a raw, primal sound that he stifled by biting into his own arm. Anna clapped a hand over her mouth, tears streaming down her face as she quickly began to stitch the wound closed with her sewing needle and fine thread. When it was done, they were both shaking. He was exhausted, but the fever had already begun to wreck normal. He had survived. In the days that followed, the true healing began. The tension in the cellar eased. The small, dark space became their world. A new language was born between them. He taught her Comanche words. Tasi for moon. Pia for mother. Akna for thank you. She taught him English, water, bread, safe. She learned his story. He wasn't a murderer. Sergeant Calhoun had been corrupt, stealing horses from the pacified tribes on the reservation and selling them. Tavis's family was next. He had gone to protest, to beg for their return. Calhoun and 2 other soldiers had tried to arrest him. When he resisted, they drew their guns. Tavis had thrown his knife. It was a lucky, or unlucky, throw. It had struck Calhoun in the throat. The other soldiers had opened fire, hitting him in the side as he fled. Anna, in turn, told him about Jacob. She found herself speaking of her loneliness, of the crushing silence of the prairie. He listened, his dark eyes holding a deep, ancient understanding of loss. A bond formed, unspoken and profound. It was in the way he would watch her hands as she sewed. It was in the way she began to bring her own mending down to the cellar, just to sit in his presence. One evening, her hand brushed his as she passed him a cup. A jolt, like lightning, passed between them. They both froze, looking at each other in the dim lantern light. It was forbidden. It was dangerous. And it was as real as the dirt floor beneath their feet. But their fragile world was being watched. Bartholomew Bart Grimsby was a weasel of a man who owned the neighboring section. He was Anna's closest neighbor, if you could call 3 miles close. He had coveted Jacob's land, especially the creek, since the day Jacob died. He'd made several crude, unwelcome offers to take the burden of the ranch off Anna's pretty little shoulders, all of which she had flatly refused. Grimsby had been suspicious of Anna for days. He'd seen the tracks that Croft's eye had caught. But where Croft saw a fugitive, Grimsby saw leverage. He'd been watching her cabin from a bluff with a spyglass. He saw her go to the barn, but not for milking. He saw her draw extra water. He saw her, late one night, empty a bucket of bloody water into the creek. And one evening, when Anna had left the trap door open for a moment to let in the cool night air, Grimsby, having snuck onto her property, peeked through the cabin window. He saw her. And he saw him. He saw Anna laughing, a soft, genuine laugh he'd never heard. He saw the Comanche warrior, his side bandaged, sitting up and smiling back at her. Grimsby's face contorted in a mask of greedy, righteous fury. He had her. He didn't ride for Sheriff Stone. He rode straight for Davis Croft, who was drowning his frustration at the town's saloon. The $200 bounty was all Grimsby cared about, and the land that would soon be forfeit. The posse came at dawn. Anna and Tavis were in the cabin. He was strong enough to walk, and she had let him out of the cellar to stretch his legs and feel the warmth of the hearth. It was a reckless, compassionate mistake. The sound of a dozen horses thundering toward the cabin was their only warning. "Anna!" Tavis yelled, his voice a sharp command. He grabbed the paring knife, his only weapon. Anna ran to the window, her blood turned to ice. It wasn't just Sheriff Stone. It was Davis Croft, Bart Grimsby, and a half-dozen deputized townsmen, all armed to the teeth. Grimsby was pointing directly at her cabin, his face alight with triumph. "The cellar!" she shrieked, running to the trapdoor. "Tavis, get in!" "No," he said, grabbing her arm. "They come for me. They will find me. You, run. Run north. Don't be a fool, they'll kill you. I can talk to them. I'll tell them." "What?" he said, his face hard. "That you helped me? They will hang you." The horses were surrounding the cabin. "Mrs. Vance!" Sheriff Stone's voice boomed. "Come out with your hands raised. We know he's in there." Anna's mind raced. There was no time, no escape. Tavis looked at her, his eyes full of a terrible sorrow. He put his hand on her cheek, a brief, rough caress. "You have a strong heart, Anna Vance. Acna." Then he did the last thing she expected. He shoved her, hard, into the small pantry and slammed the door, dropping the bar on the outside. "Tavis! No!" she screamed, pounding on the wood. "Tavis, open this door!" She heard him kick the buffalo rug away from the trap door. He wasn't hiding. He was using it to make his stand. "Tavis!" Davis Croft's voice. "Come out and we'll let the woman live." A shot exploded, the sound of splintering wood. They were firing into the cabin. Anna was sobbing, clawing at the thick pantry door. "Jedediah!" she screamed. "Sheriff Stone! Don't! He's—" The front door of the cabin burst open with the force of a battering ram. She heard men shouting, boots stomping. "He's in the cellar!" That was Grimsby. "Toss in the lamp!" Croft roared. "No!" Stone yelled. "You'll burn her alive!" "She's in the pantry! I saw her!" Grimsby shrieked. "Burn him out!" A new, terrifying sound. A whoosh and the smell of kerosene. Then, a terrible, guttural war cry from beneath the floor. The trapdoor flew open, and Tavis erupted from the cellar. He was not a patient. He was a warrior. He had used the distraction to climb up the chimney flue, emerging onto the roof. Before they realized their mistake, he was on them. He launched himself from the roof onto the back of Bart Grimsby, pulling the man from his horse as a shield. He had the paring knife to Grimsby's throat. "Back off!" Tavis roared, his English perfect in his rage. "All of you, back off!" The posse reined in, their rifles trained on the scene. Grimsby was pale, squealing. "Let him go, Comanche!" Croft sneered, leveling his rifle. "You can't escape." "Maybe not," Tavis said, his eyes finding Anna's window. "But I can send this one to hell first." Sheriff Stone held up a hand. "Son, don't make this worse. You're cornered. Let Grimsby go. I'll see you get a fair trial." Tavis laughed, a bitter, harsh sound. "A fair trial, like Sergeant Calhoun." This gave Stone pause, but Croft was impatient. "To hell with this," Croft said. He aimed his rifle, not at Tavis, but at Grimsby. "The bounty's dead or alive. It don't say who." Croft fired. Grimsby jerked, a red flower blooming on his chest. Tavis, shocked, shoved the dying man away as a volley of shots erupted. A bullet tore through Tavis's shoulder. Another grazed his temple. He staggered, the knife falling from his numb fingers. He was a dead man. "No!" Anna had broken through the pantry door. She ran onto the porch, directly into the line of fire. "Stop, please, stop!" The shooting ceased. Anna ran to Tavis, who had fallen to his knees, his blood staining the red dirt of her yard. She knelt, cradling his head, shielding him with her own body. "Anna, "Run," he whispered, his eyes losing focus. "I won't," she wept. "I won't leave you." Davis Croft walked forward, smoke curling from his rifle. He grabbed Anna by the hair and threw her to the ground. "Get off the merchandise, traitor!" He kicked Tavis, who was barely conscious. "Not so tough now, are you, boy?" "Enough, Davis!" Sheriff Stone strode forward, his face a mask of thunder. He had seen Croft shoot Grimsby. "This is over." "It is," Croft said, leveling his pistol at Tavis's head. "Gonna collect my $200. He's to stand a trial, Croft. That's the law. He's a Comanche. This is the law." As Croft's finger tightened on the trigger, Sheriff Stone did something that would haunt him for years. He raised his own pistol and fired it into the dirt at Croft's feet. "I said, enough! You'll not execute a man in my custody, or in front of Mrs. Vance." Croft hesitated, his black eyes promising murder. He slowly holstered his pistol. Fine, he'll just hang in Redemption Creek. And her with him. Sheriff Stone looked at Anna, who was covered in Tavis's blood, her face a mask of defiant despair. He looked at the dead body of Bart Grimsby. He looked at the wounded, shackled warrior. "Mrs. Vance," Stone said, his voice hollow. "Anna, you are under arrest for harboring a fugitive and aiding a known felon. God help you." They threw Tavis over a horse like a sack of grain. They put Anna on her own mare, her hands bound. As they rode away, she didn't look back. The cabin, her home, was already being looted by the posse, a bounty hunter's payment. Tavis, delirious with pain, managed to lift his head. Their eyes met. His heart, in that moment, began its search. He had failed to protect her. He had brought ruin to her door. He would find her. Even if it meant crawling from the grave, he would find her, and make this right. The West was not kind to its prisoners. For Tavis and Anna, it provided two very different, but equally brutal, versions of hell. Anna's hell, the territorial prison at Yuma. Anna was found guilty. The trial was a formality. The combined testimony of Sheriff Stone and Davis Croft, added to the town's hysteria, sealed her fate. She was a traitor, an Indian lover. She was sentenced to 5 years. Not in Texas, but in the infamous territorial prison at Yuma. They sent her by prison wagon, chained to 3 other women, a prostitute who had stabbed a client, a thief, and a silent, hollow-eyed woman who had poisoned her abusive husband. The Yuma prison was a sun-baked stone fortress on the banks of the Colorado River. The heat was a physical entity, a suffocating blanket that never lifted. Anna's cell was a cramped, lightless hole she shared with the silent poisoner, a woman named Sadie. The matrons were cruel. The work was soul-crushing, laundry for the nearby fort, scrubbing floors with lye soap that ate the skin from her hands. But the worst part was the loss. Her old life was gone. Her home, her dignity. The memory of Jacob, which had been a soft, mournful comfort, was now joined by the sharp, agonizing memory of Tavis being dragged away in chains. But the frontier that had made her a widow had also made her a survivor. Anna Vance did not break. She learned the prison's rules. She learned to stay silent. She learned from Sadie, who was not hollow, but waiting. Sadie taught her how to read the guards, how to hide a small portion of bread, how to make a weapon from a sharpened spoon. "You're not like the others," Sadie whispered to her one night, the first words Anna had heard her speak in a month. "You're not guilty. You're angry. Good. Guilt makes you weak. Anger keeps you warm." Anna held on to her anger. She channeled it. She grew thin, but her spirit hardened. Her soft hands became calloused and strong. Her eyes, once soft, became watchful and sharp. She was no longer just a widow. She was a convict, and she was surviving. Once Davis Croft visited. He had business in Arizona. He came to the prison, his face smug, and requested to see her. "Heard you were settling in," he sneered through the bars. Anna just stared at him. "That brave of yours," Croft continued. "They sent him to Fort Sill. Heard he's breaking rocks. A real shame. I was hoping he'd try to escape. I'd still get my money." Anna's face remained impassive. "He's never going to see you again," Croft said, trying to get a reaction. "And when you get out, you'll have nothing. That ranch of yours, I put a lien on it for my services in finding the fugitive. It's mine." Anna finally spoke. Her voice was a dry, cold rasp. "When you see Tavis again, tell him I'm waiting." Croft's smile faltered. He had come to gloat, but her cold defiance unsettled him. This wasn't the terrified woman he'd arrested. He left, a seed of unease planted in his black heart. Tavis's Hell, Fort Sill, Indian Territory. Tavis didn't go to a civilian prison. As a hostile, he was sent to the military prison at Fort Sill, Oklahoma. His hell was not one of heat, but of humiliation. They cut his hair. They took his name. They put him in scratchy blue soldier's fatigues and called him Tom. They chained him to other renegades, Kiowa, Cheyenne, and fellow Comanche, and forced him to break rocks, to build the walls of his own prison. The soldiers, remembering Sergeant Calhoun, were particularly brutal. They beat him for speaking his own language. They starved him for sport. But Tavis's mind was a fortress. Like Anna, he didn't break. He learned. He saw that the warriors who fought back were killed. The ones who despaired died. The ones who survived adapted. He remembered Anna's patience, her quiet strength. He would be like that. He stopped fighting. He became Tom, the model prisoner. He learned to speak English fluently, picking it up from the guards and the civilized Kiowa scouts. He became quiet, obedient, and observant. After a year, he was assigned to the stables. He had a way with horses, a silent communication the soldiers envied. He became valuable. After 2 years, a new, ambitious captain, Charles Mercer, saw a use for him. He made Tavis a scout, an Indian on a leash. Tavis, now known as Tom Shadow, rode with the cavalry. He tracked Apache raiders. He found lost children. He was the best tracker they had, and they began to trust him. They mistook his obedience for assimilation. They were wrong. Every night he thought of Anna. He didn't know where she was. Croft's words, relayed by a spiteful guard that she was gone, could have meant anything. Dead. Imprisoned. Married. He didn't care. He would find her. He used his position as a scout. He learned to read newspapers. He learned how the white man's world worked. He was no longer just a warrior. He was a strategist. He saved his pay. He memorized maps. His heart was a compass, and it pointed to a ghost. He was searching, and he was waiting for the perfect moment to run. 3 years, 4 months, and 10 days. Anna was released from Yuma for exemplary behavior. She had helped save 2 guards during a cholera outbreak, her nursing skills from that terrible week in the cellar proving invaluable. She was given a new dress, $5, and told not to return to Texas. She was a ghost. Her ranch was gone, legally stolen by Davis Croft. Her reputation was in ruins. She was 27 years old, and she had nothing but the clothes on her back and the iron in her spine. She drifted, working odd jobs in mining towns, trying to erase her past. She called herself Ella Vance. She ended up in a dusty, forgotten corner of New Mexico called Sanctuary, a town that belied its name. She got a job as a seamstress in the back of a mercantile, mending torn shirts for cowboys and altering dresses for the saloon girls. She was quiet, kept to herself. The men in town saw a pale, pretty woman with haunted eyes, and assumed she was breakable. They learned quickly she was not. She kept a sharpened pair of shears by her cot. She was alive, but she was not living. She was waiting. For what? She didn't know. 2 months after Anna arrived in Sanctuary, Tavis made his move. He was on a 3-day scouting patrol near the Cimarron River. He had his horse, a rifle, and a week's worth of rations. He simply disappeared. Tom Shadow was gone. Tavis was back. He was a fugitive once more. But this time he was not a wounded, desperate boy. He was a seasoned man, fluent in 2 worlds, and driven by a single cold purpose. He rode south. He avoided the forts, the towns, the patrols. He traveled by night, living off the land. He was searching for any trace of Anna Vance. He started in Redemption Creek. From a distance, he saw her cabin. It was a burnt-out shell. Davis Croft, in his anger, had razed it to the ground after seizing the land. Tavis felt a cold, killing rage. He went to the town. He found the small cemetery. He searched for her name, his heart in his throat. He found Jacob's grave, but not hers. She was alive. He became a shadow, listening in saloons, in feed stores. He heard whispers of the Indian lover who had been sent to Yuma. He rode west. It took him months. He tracked her like he would track a wounded deer by the faintest signs. A prison release record in Arizona, a rumor of a pretty, sad-eyed woman working in a laundry, a story of a seamstress who had nearly blinded a drunk cowboy. He finally tracked the name Ella Vance to Sanctuary. He rode into town at dusk. It was just another collection of clapboard and sin. He tied his horse in an alley and watched. He saw her through the front window of the Mercantile. His heart stopped. She was older, thinner. The softness was gone, replaced by a weary resilience. She was folding a dress, her face illuminated by the yellow lamplight. She was beautiful. He waited until the Mercantile owner locked up and left. He waited until the lights in the saloon were bright and the street was empty. He moved to the back of the building, where he knew she lived. He picked the simple lock on her door with the ease of a man who had learned many new, dark skills. Anna was sitting on her cot, brushing her long, dark hair. She heard the click of the lock. She spun, the shears in her hand, her body coiled. A man stood in the doorway, silhouetted against the night. He was tall, dressed in trail-worn clothes, his face hidden by the shadow of a hat. "Get out," she said, her voice low and steady, "or I'll scream, and I won't miss." The man took a step into the room. "I have missed you," he said. Anna's hand trembled. The shears clattered to the floor. She knew that voice. It was deeper, the accent almost gone, but it was his. "Tavis?" she whispered, the name a prayer she hadn't dared speak in years. He stepped into the light. His hair was shorter, cut in the white man's style, but his eyes were the same. They were the eyes of the man she had pulled from the mud, the eyes of the warrior who had surrendered his knife to her. She didn't run to him. She couldn't move. She just stared, her hand covering her mouth, a sob catching in her throat. He took another step, his hands open at his sides. "Anna," he said, his voice thick with an emotion that mirrored her own. "I told you. I would find you. They told me. They told me you were." "I am here," he said. She finally moved, taking one step, then another, until she was standing in front of him. She raised a trembling hand and touched his face, tracing the small scar at his temple where the bullet had grazed him. It was real. I waited," she wept, her defenses so carefully built over 3 years crumbling to dust. He pulled her to him, his arms crushing her, and buried his face in her hair. "I know," he breathed. I know, I never stopped searching. Their reunion was not a gentle one. It was a collision of two survivors, two halves of a whole that had been torn apart. But they were not safe. They were never safe. A man stepped out of the alley shadows across the street. He had been watching the mercantile for an hour, ever since he'd seen the strange, tamed Indian scout ride into town. Davis Croft ran his thumb over the hammer of his pistol. He had lost the ranch. The courts had overturned his claim on a technicality. He had lost his reputation. Sheriff Stone had seen to that, telling everyone who would listen how Croft had shot Grimsby in the back. But he had never lost the scent. He'd always known the Comanche would come for her. And he had been waiting. "Got you," Croft whispered, a grin splitting his face. "Both of you." The knock on the door was sharp, arrogant. Tavis and Anna sprang apart. The piece of their reunion was shattered. "Ella Vance," Davis Croft's voice. "I know you're in there, and I know who you've got with you. Send him out." Tavis's face hardened. He pushed Anna behind him, his eyes scanning the tiny room for a weapon, a way out. There was only the back window, and it was too small. "He's a fugitive from military justice, Ella," Croft yelled. "That's a federal crime. You're harboring him again. You'll hang for this. Both of you." "What does he want?" Anna whispered, her heart hammering. "Me," Tavis said, his voice low and cold. It was never about the bounty. It's his pride. He looked at her. "I will not let him take you." "We fight," Anna said. It wasn't a question. She picked up her shears. "Stay away from the door," Tavis commanded. "I got 3 men with me," Croft lied. "Come out now, Tom Shadow, or we come in." Tavis saw the lie. He had been scouting Croft for the last hour. The bounty hunter was alone. He was arrogant. "Anna," Tavis said, "when he comes through that door, go out the window. Go, and do not look back." "No," she said, her voice fierce. "Not again. I am not losing you again." "Anna!" The door exploded inward. Croft stood there, backlit by the streetlights, his pistol leveled. "Well, well," he sneered. "The happy reunion." Tavis didn't hesitate. He threw the small wooden chair from the corner, aiming for Croft's gun hand. Croft fired. The shot went wide, shattering a mirror. Tavis used the motion to lunge, not at Croft, but at the lamp on the table. He swept it to the floor. The room was plunged into darkness, the oil igniting on the floorboards. "Anna, now!" Tavis yelled. Croft fired again, wildly, into the dark. "You're not getting away!" Tavis tackled him, and the 2 men crashed to the floor, wrestling for the pistol. They were silhouettes against the growing flames. Anna didn't run. She grabbed the heavy iron skillet from her cold stove. Croft was stronger. He was on top of Tavis, his fingers digging into Tavis's throat, the pistol just inches from his face. "I've been waiting for this," he rasped. "So have I," Anna said. She brought the skillet down on the back of Croft's head with all the force of her 3 years of anger. There was a sickening crack. Croft's body went limp. He collapsed on top of Tavis. Tavis shoved the bounty hunter off, gasping for air. The room was filling with smoke. "Tavis, are you hit?" Anna cried, grabbing his arm. "No!" He got to his feet, pulling her toward the back window. "Fire!" a voice yelled from the street. The door was blocked by flames. Tavis smashed the window with the skillet. "Go! Go!" He bundled her through the small opening, cutting her arms on the glass, and then scrambled out after her. They landed in the dark alley, coughing, their ears ringing. "This way." Tavis pulled her toward his horse. They ran out of the alley, only to stop dead. Standing in the middle of the street, his horse breathing hard, was Sheriff Jedediah Stone. He was older, his hair white, his face a map of regret. He wasn't wearing a badge. "Sheriff," Anna breathed, her heart sinking. It was over. Stone looked at them. He looked at the burning mercantile, at the townsfolk now shouting and forming a bucket brigade. He looked at Tavis and Anna, their hands linked, both of them covered in soot and blood. His eyes fell on the figure staggering out of the burning doorway. Davis Croft, alive, clutching his head, his pistol raised. "Traitors!" Croft screamed, blood streaming down his face. He saw them and leveled his gun. "You're all dead!" Bang! A single shot echoed through the street. Croft stood frozen for a second, a look of pure surprise on his face. He looked down at the new, dark hole in his chest, then crumpled to the ground, dead. Tavis and Anna stared. Jedediah Stone sat on his horse, his own pistol still smoking in his hand. He had been tracking Croft, not them. He'd heard Croft was in the territory, bragging about how he was going to finish the job with Anna Vance. The old sheriff, now retired, had come to stop him. Stone looked at the body. He looked at Tavis. "I heard," Stone said, his voice quiet, "that Sergeant Calhoun was selling army rifles to the Apache. His ledger was found a year after you were sent to Sill. Your story was true." Tavis said nothing. Anna stepped forward. "Sheriff, Jedediah. What now?" Stone holstered his pistol. He looked at the chaos of the fire, at the dead bounty hunter. "Now," he said, "I make my report. I'll tell the marshal I got to town just as a fire broke out. I saw Mr. Croft, a known troublemaker, running from the flames. He fired on me, and I returned fire. It was self-defense." He looked at Anna, then at Tavis. "As for you two, I never saw you. I never saw Ella Vance, and I never saw the scout they call Tom Shadow. I saw no one." He gave Tavis a long, hard look. "The search for Anna Vance is over, son. But your life as a fugitive isn't. You need to disappear. Both of you." "Where can we go?" Anna asked, her voice trembling with a new, fragile hope. "Go north," Stone said. "Keep riding until you're past the law, past the territories. Go to Canada, find a new name, find a new life." He tipped his hat, a gesture of finality. "Godspeed, Mrs. Vance." He turned his horse and rode toward the fire, toward the gathering crowd, his back to them. Tavis pulled Anna onto his horse. He kicked the animal into a gallop, and they disappeared into the darkness, heading north. They didn't look back. The past was a landscape of fire and graves. Ahead of them was only the dark, open prairie, and the moon, the posse that he had taught her so long ago. His heart had stopped searching, for she was with him. But their journey to find peace had only just begun. The search is over, but their journey was just beginning. The story of Anna and Tavis is a powerful reminder that the West wasn't just one with guns and laws, but with unbreakable hearts and a resilience that defied a brutal world. They were two fugitives, one from the law, one from her past, who found their only sanctuary in each other. What do you think happened to them in the North? Did they finally find their peace? And what about Sheriff Stone? Was his final act justice, or just a different kind of law? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you were captivated by their story of survival and sacrifice, please show your support by hitting that like button. It truly helps this channel. Share this video with someone else who loves a powerful, real-life Western drama. And don't forget to subscribe for more forgotten legends and incredible tales from the frontier. Your support keeps these stories alive. Thank you for listening.